Welcome, fellow audio sorcerers, wizards, and gurus to my channel. I'm Dan Spencer, and I am the Audio Sorcerer. So this is the channel where I teach you how to perfect your recording, mixing, and mastering skills. So in today's video, we're talking about the IK Multimedia Mixbox again, but we're actually going to talk about my 5 favorite processors within the plugin. So this is kind of a continuation from my last video. We're actually going to be using the same session that I used in the last video, and that session was completely mixed using Mixbox. So I do want to tell you guys that these processors are not in any specific order throughout the video, not from least favorite to favorite, anything like that. They're just kind of sporadic in the video. And I do have timestamps below in chapters where you guys can fast forward to any specific ones that you want to see. So I also want to mention that if you love this plugin, if you love Mixbox, you can actually go to an affiliate link I have below. You can go purchase it. And any money that I make from it, I put back in this channel so I can keep making great content for you guys. And I also offer mixing and mastering services, so if you want to get your song mixed by yours truly, you can go to audiosorcerer.com. You can check out my samples and my rates, and I give 20% off to new customers. And if you guys haven't liked this video, give it a thumbs up. Please subscribe and hit that notification bell to know how new videos are coming out. So with that being said, let's get to this tutorial. Imagine softly. Alright, so here we are on Pro Tools, and today we are talking about my 5 favorite processors within the IK Multimedia Mixbox plugin. And the session that I have open right now is the session I did in my last video where I showed you guys a song that was completely mixed by Mixbox, and this is it here again. So I'm going to show you how I used my 5 favorite processors in here, and you'll get to see what I did with them. So let's start with our first processor, which is the SVT Classic. So the SVT Classic processor is right here. This is what it looks like. I have my mouse cursor going over it. This is modeling the Ampeg SVT Classic amplifier. So I have it on my bass guitars. There is the regular bass track right here, and this is the parallel bass track for parallel compression. And I'm one who likes to actually record my bass guitars via DI. I like to record them direct, and I like to put amp simulation on them. I feel personally I don't get all that much benefit from miking up a bass cab, so please don't smack me for saying that. I just feel like bass is one of the easiest real instruments to manipulate in a positive way. So this is what the module looks like as mentioned. So you got your gain knob, so that's essentially your input level. You got your bass, you got your mids, you got your mid frequency, and you got your treble. So you can actually set your mid frequency right here. And this is what this would affect when you're moving it around. And then you have some buttons here you can enable for ultra low and ultra high. So this would be some really high shimmer, which do you really need on bass? No, not really. But it does actually add something a little extra in there, which is kind of cool. And the ultra low, that's going to be your really low like sub bass. And don't freak out that I have it enabled on a rock song. It's not like over the top. it's good. And then here's your volume knob, and then you got your mix knob here, which is kind of cool because then you can kind of create a nice mix between the dry signal and the amp signal, which is something that is done quite a bit in studio. So when people are recording through a bass cab, they're miking the bass cab, they're also taking another line of the bass into a DI, and then they have both tracks. So this one knob can kind of help you recreate that. So what I want to do is I want to play this soloed first with this enabled, and then I'm going to kind of disable it throughout and then re-enable so you can kind of hear what it sounds like, and then I'll let you hear it in the mix. Now there's a ton of processing going on this bass, of course, after it, and there's also some more processing going with on my little bass bus right here. But you're going to see when I disable this, it makes a huge difference. Okay, so let's take a listen. right, cool. So you can obviously hear quite a bit of difference between when I enable and disable that. Now, the DI is definitely brighter when I disable this, and then when I enable it, of course, it's a little more muffy sounding, as you could say, and definitely a lot more bass within it. Now, I guess it's debatable to say whether you think it sounds better with it or without it, because you're hearing it in solo, but in the mix, it definitely sounds better with it on, and it definitely rounds out the sound. And when I enable it, I hope you kind of hear that it does feel like it's more of an amp cab sound. For you guys that play bass, you can kind of hear that more than people that don't. But when this isn't enabled, it definitely sounds like a DI track to me. So let's actually hear it in the mix, and I will start it disabled this time, and then I will enable it. Let's give it a listen. Step back from all these problems. I hope this time we sit and talk about it. I'm awake without sleeping. I think this time I won't let you walk away. Won't let you walk away. Oh no. All right, cool. So it actually sounds good with it off, but it sounds closer to amazing with it on. And one thing you should have noticed that when I disabled it, you're probably like, where'd my low end go? When I re-enabled it, it's like all the low end came back, but we still had that really nice, I call it the 1K Fendery bass sound, you know, the kind of pops out on the frets that you would be able to hear on laptop speakers. So that's why I love this module here, this processor. So let's actually move on to our next module, which is going to be the Saturator X. All right, so we got the Saturator X here. It's this yellow processor. And I used this on several tracks throughout the session, including the master bus. So what I use it for is either actual saturation, that gives a little bit of a distorted sound, or I use it for tape emulation. And on this particular track here, this is the lead vocal track I'm actually using to get some of that distorted saturation sound out of it to make the vocal cut through the mix and just sound a smidge bit bigger. So if I'm telling you how to use this plugin here, I'm pretty happy with just using it on tape. I think tape 1 sounds really good. Now the other types of saturation that I use if I'm not using mixed box are usually just tube saturation. So if you see here, you can barely see it. This says tube right here. And I believe the push-pull and class A on both sides of tube are both related to tube. I wish I could tell you for sure, but the manual actually doesn't tell you, so I can't tell you for sure. And then you also got solid state down here in the same situation. But again, I think if you stick with tape 1 on this, and I've been playing around with it, I think tape 1 sounds the best, and it should get you what you need. So for this vocal track here, for me to get that saturation out of it, I have to increase the gain knob. So the point of this is you increase the gain knob till it is getting more up here in the red, and that's going to get you that actual saturation sound. If you want to leave the gain all the way down and this thing is barely registering here, you're just getting that kind of, I would say, tape emulation, just that smidge of saturation that comes from tape. And then of course you can use your output knob to decrease the gain here to kind of even it out. So let's take a listen to the vocal track, solo it up, and I will kind of bring this processor in and out. So let's give it a listen. And I step back from all these problems. I hope this time we'd sit and talk about it. I'm awake without sleeping. I think this time. All right, cool. So it's definitely subtle. I'm not trying to make it go completely over the top, but you should have been able to hear when I took it out that we lost a little bit of that, distortion. And sometimes when you hear a vocal and solo like that, oh, does that actually sound good? And the truth is, yes, it actually sounds really good in the mix. So let's actually give it a listen in the mix, and then you can hear the difference. And I'll probably play it a couple times just so we can, really hear the difference. So let's start with it off, and I'll bring it in. Step back from all these problems. I hope this time we'd sit and talk about it. I'm awake without
this time we'd sit and talk about it. I'm awake without sleep, and I think this time.
All right, cool. So did you guys hear that? It's very subtle, but what I tried to do is I tried to bring it in and out on the phrases that were, several words after another, not the part where it was necessarily holding it out. So, I mean, I did it several different ways, but do you guys hear how it just kind of makes it sound a little bit bigger? And that's kind of what saturation of vocals is for. It's like we're taking all these different processors and effects and EQs and compressors, whatever, and we're trying to just add in just a smidge of each subtly until together they create this massive big sound, of course, if that's what we're going for. And I think this Saturator X does an amazing job. Again, Mixbox is new, just came out, but I can see myself using this in place of some of my other saturators that I use. So I definitely really like this plugin. So with that being said, let's actually move on to our next processor, which is the White 2A. All right, so we got the White 2A here, which is modeled after the LA2A leveling compressor slash limiter. So you have a button here which allows you to go between limit and compress. So I have this on compress because this is a vocal track. We're actually going to test it out on a verse vocal. And then you have the output knob, and then your peak reduction will actually get you your gain reduction here. So this is a very simple processor to use. So what this does for vocals is it basically obviously levels out the sound, but it also makes them sound bigger and pushes them more forward. This is one of my favorite compressors to use on vocals. I actually like to use it with a Blue 1176. So I like to do multiple stages of compression on vocals, and this one is always in my chain, always. So with that being said, let's actually give it a listen. I will disable it first and I'll bring it in, and you can hear it in solo mode first. So here we go.
Well, the differences were changing between now and then, and we knew that it was fate because we meet again. Sit back and relive all those things that we did. You see, kid, you'll never make it if your past is bricks. Replace the season with the summer and you'll see it's bliss. Roll down the windows, make noise like you're not from Ohio.
So yeah, it definitely sounds pretty sexy. Like I said, it pushes it forward. It makes it sound just a smidge bit bigger. So let's actually hear it in the mix, and I will disable it first and then bring it in. Here we go.
Well, the differences were changing between now and then, and we knew that it was fate because we meet again. Sit back and relive all those things that we did. You see, kid, you'll never make it if your past is bricks. Replace the season with the summer and you'll see it's bliss. Roll down the windows, make noise like you're not from Ohio.
Cool. You guys hear how much more it is in your face? It basically pushed it forward in the mix, and that's what we really need from our vocal compressors. So again, just a little tip for you guys. If you guys have a Blue 1176 plugin, it's great to use in conjunction with a LA2A. Now, T-Rax / the Mixbox here is the only LA2A plugin that I personally own. So this one always ends up in my sessions. So great plugin here, great processor. So let's move on to our fourth processor, which is the British EQ. All right, so the British EQ is modeled after an SSL EQ, and I use an SSL EQ on pretty much 100% of my tracks. It ends up on there. And what I love about the SSL EQ, especially for guitars, and that's what I'm going to show to you on, is this EQ is great for getting that bite out of guitars. And this is going to be so drastic that we don't even need to listen to it in the mix because it's going to not really do it justice. I'm just going to let you guys hear it soloed, and then we will start with it bypassed, and then I'll bring it in. And I apologize, this guitar track is kind of a little bit out of tune here and there, but just deal with it. Here we go. All right, do you hear that kind of bite that this EQ brings out here? And I'm actually going to kind of just tell you how to use it here. It's super easy to use on overdriven guitars like that. So if you go down to the bottom here, this is your highs here, and this defaults to, I think, 5K. And then you have your volume knob here. Now this is a high shelf. So all you got to do to get the bite out of your overdriven guitars is to literally leave this here and adjust the dBs up till it just feels right. Till you get that bite out till it's not too ear piercing. You want to be careful about that. And then that's it for that particular range. And then lastly, if you go into your high mids here, I think this defaults to about 2K. Same concept. I would say just a smooth Q here and then just a minimal boost here just to get a little bit extra more of that mid-range bite out. And that's really all you got to do with the CQ to achieve the sound that I did there. I like to high pass, obviously some of the really lows on the guitar. And then I also like to low pass, sometimes as far down to 7K. But if you notice, this EQ does not have a high pass or low pass filter on it. And I mentioned that in my last video, how that concerned me, but it's fine. We have other EQs we can do to achieve that. So yeah, that's all you really got to do to get your overdriven guitars to pop out in the mix and to make them have that kind of bite. So with that being said, let's actually move on to our last processor, which is the bus compressor. All right, so we got the bus compressor right here, and this is modeling an SSL bus compressor. And I always have some sort of SSL emulation on my master bus. It's my absolutely favorite master bus compressor. So we have our ratio here, and we have 4 different settings for it there. We have our attack, we have our release, and then I believe this high pass here, SC high pass, is actually saying, hey, don't trigger the compressor with frequencies below this here. So I have it set at 150. Don't quote me on that, but I'm pretty sure that's what it does. And then the threshold here, of course, gets us our gain reduction. And then we have our makeup gain and then a grit button. And usually when I'm doing a rock song, I usually kick in the grit button here. So this is going to glue our mix together and potentially make it sound a little bit more punchy. And I also think it kind of inflates it a bit, makes it sound a little bit bigger. So let's actually give it a listen, starting with it off, and then I'll bring it back in. So here we go.
Step back from all these problems. I hope this time we'd sit and talk about it. I'm awake without sleeping. I think this time I won't let you walk away. Won't let you walk away. Oh no.
All right, let's actually give it one more listen. This time we'll start with it on and then I'll turn it off. Here we go.
Step back from all these problems. I hope this time we'd sit and talk about it. I'm awake without sleeping. I think this time I won't let you walk away.
All right, so you gotta admit that sounds pretty drastically different in a very positive way. I love this compressor. I think it sounds amazing. It glues everything together. It brings out stuff in the mix that maybe was there but wasn't really there, and I just love it. And if you notice for the gain reduction here, I was hitting around -2, -3. That is my goal for all of my rock mixes and pretty much all my mixes. I want to hit between -2, -3 gain reduction. So, and I also want to make sure that I have a not super fast attack, something that's kind of maybe medium to fast. So I'm allowing the transients to get through because that's going to allow for the mix to be punchy. And then we want a quick release. So those are some settings to think about on your master bus compressor. And then, I should mention, yeah, you want a low ratio because you don't want to be smashing, your mix because it's going to take the life out of it. This plugin, is the one that has to be treated the most carefully because if you set your master bus compressor not correctly, you can destroy your mix. So those are my 5 favorite processors within the IK Multimedia Mixbox. So I hope you guys liked this tutorial. I hope you learned something from it, and I tried to throw in a few extra little tips for you on how to use these actual processors, and maybe even in conjunction with other plugins. So if you guys end up liking this video, give it a thumbs up. Please subscribe and hit that notification bell to know how new videos coming out. So with that being said, until the next video, I will see you guys later, and peace out.